Runestones survive as striking relics from the Viking Age, providing insight into Viking culture and society. Today, we'll be covering a range of topics related to runestones, ranging from historical and geographical background to specific famous examples and everything in between. Totaling over 3,000 in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, these stones function as memorials, religious artifacts, and political propaganda tools, bearing witness to those who lived during this period. They were used to commemorate people and significant events, such as battles, passing of loved ones, important projects, or voyages to distant lands like Eastern Europe, Byzantine Empire, and the Middle East. By inscribing runic inscriptions onto stones, these men and women demonstrated their desire to leave a lasting legacy. Sweden boasts the largest collection of runestones with as many as 2,500 stones. The Uppland district in Sweden has the highest concentration, with an astonishing 1,196 stone inscriptions, with the Södermanland province followed closely behind with 391, while Denmark and Norway are represented to a much lesser extent, with 250 and 50 respectively. Though the majority of runestones were raised between 950 and 1100 AD, a total of around 50 runestones are known in Scandinavia that were created during the migration period covering the years 476 to approximately 800 AD. The high number of runestones created over the centuries throughout Scandinavia attests to their cultural significance, as well as the societal and political networks that supported their production and dissemination. Most runestones were erected in memory of deceased individuals, and almost all inscriptions started with the memorial formula stating who sponsored the monument and in whose honor it was built. These inscriptions typically provided additional information about the sponsor or the deceased person, such as their social status, titles, voyages abroad, military achievements, causes, and places of death. They often feature multiple names, including siblings, uncles, parents, housecarls, and business partners alongside the deceased, and the runic inscription often ended with the name of the carver himself. While the inclusion of the sponsor's name may be an attempt to clarify or strengthen the individual's claims to the deceased's estate, the significance of the additional names, however, remains unknown. While pagan spells and invocations are rare, Christian crosses and prayers were common, especially in Uppland, Sweden. Besides their memorial significance, these inscriptions sometimes provide evidence of extensive trading networks and exploratory achievements. Now, they weren't always raised in honor of those who died abroad. Quite the contrary. In fact, only a small fraction, about 5%, commemorate those who didn't return home from Viking expeditions. Nonetheless, the foreign voyage runestones convey the same message as the majority, to commemorate one or several deceased family members. Scandinavian women had a greater role in Viking culture compared to other contemporary cultures, so it should not be surprising that a significant portion of these monuments were erected by women. In fact, approximately 1 in 8 runestones were raised by single women, and at least 10% were erected in collaboration with multiple men, primarily in Uppland, Södermanland, and Öland. And while it was very common for sons and widows to erect runestones for their deceased relatives, it was not uncommon for siblings and other relatives to do the same. Prior to the 10th century, these inscriptions varied in content and sometimes contained magical meanings, making it challenging to determine their true purpose. However, inscriptions from the end of the 10th century became more straightforward and factual, with similar language, formulation, and content. Today, researchers analyze the stylistic imagery and content of runic inscriptions to more accurately date runestones. For example, by examining the shapes of animal heads and tails on these runestones, evolving artistic patterns can be compared to known Viking artistic styles to establish a time period when each monument was erected. Another method includes analyzing the typography of the Futhark alphabet characters, studying the origins and development of words and etymology. Despite all these efforts, dating individual inscriptions can still prove difficult, but Danish inscriptions, including those in Bornholm, are generally believed to originate in the late 10th and early 11th century. Runestones in Västergötland and Östergötland thought to be contemporary with the Danish inscription, while those found in other parts of Sweden are slightly younger. It is worth noting that in Uppland and Bornholm, most of the runestones were not erected until several decades into the 11th century. In some areas, they were still being erected well into the 12th century. Vikings used Old Norse as their primary language and often carved stones onto sturdy materials such as wood, iron, and stone instead of writing them on paper. The angular shapes of these runes were distinct from modern alphabets, making them easier to carve into harder surfaces. The younger Futhark alphabet, also known as Scandinavian runes, of the Old Norse language consisted of short, straight, and diagonal lines and was used by people of all classes and in various dialects. Spelling variations due to factors such as the pneumatic nature of the Futhark, regional dialects, the absence of standardized spelling systems, and sometimes simply the personal preferences of individual runemasters could lead the same word to be engraved in several different ways, resulting in a complicated translation process even though Old Norse is classified as a single language. The runic alphabet underwent a significant transformation during Viking Age, with older Futhark had 24 characters, gave way to the younger Futhark, which only had 16 symbols. The younger Futhark also sometimes had different styles through various media, resulting in variation in runic inscriptions. Long Branch was formal and carved into stone, while Short Twig was informal and for wood, while Staveless was a quick shorthand. Runes could also appear in different directions, including opposite directions. However, inscriptions were not limited to these methods and could appear in various contexts. Runemasters were skilled artisans who were able to put these spoken words of the Old Norse language into pieces that lasted for centuries. Although most early medieval Scandinavians were likely able to read and write in runes, crafting runestones required specialized stonemasonry skills. Often hired for official purposes, these craftsmen would sign their work with the phrase, "X carved these runes." In Sweden alone, over 100 runemasters' names are known from this period, with most originating from the eastern Svealand region in the 11th century. But even when runestone construction was at its peak, only a few runemasters were considered true professionals, with such notable runemasters from the 11th to early 12th centuries included Asmund Korason, Ale, Fut, Guenborga, Aftan, Opir, Korgat Fotsarve, Ulva Borista, and Visate. It's possible that many runemasters may have held a prominent place in the social hierarchy as skilled poets or skalds, who utilized skaldic poetry and oral tradition to record historical events and advise royalty. They could have formed a secular upper class of learned runemasters in pro-Scandinavian priesthood, perhaps connected to the Old Norse title Jarl, chieftain, or heir to the throne. The distribution of runestones across eastern Norway supports this theory, but there's insufficient linguistic evidence to confirm it conclusively. But because of the special set of skills needed, these professional runemasters were likely quite expensive to commission. Therefore, many runic inscriptions were created by non-professionals for practical purposes, such as record-keeping or burial rites, and these non-professionals likely came from diverse backgrounds, including pirates, soldiers, merchants, and farmers, as shown in the daily life depictions on some runestones. While many anonymous runestones have been attributed to these masters, certainty regarding their authorship can vary. While the inscriptions often honor great warriors and leaders, they also often depict or describe the significance of gods and goddesses central to Norse mythology, with later runestones eventually portraying the central beings of Christianity. Within the Norse religion and mythology, Aesir and Vanir pantheons included revered deities like Odin and Thor, who was frequently invoked on runestones, bless an individual's memory and often depicted with his magical hammer Mjolnir. Odin isn't named on many runestones, but was occasionally referenced through poetic titles and epithets, such as the one found on the Malt stone. Norse believed these deities possessed immense power and influence, and along with others, the Norse religion revolved around the Yggdrasil, the world tree, which played a central role in their daily lives. According to their unique cosmology, Yggdrasil contained various realms, including distinct afterlife realms. Transmitted orally from generation to generation, their religion used cultic spaces for sacrificial rituals, as kings and chiefs believed these public acts were necessary to please the gods, while other practices like Sather, a form of sorcery, were met with suspicion. Christianization of the Nordic and Baltic countries spanned the 8th to the 12th centuries. Although early signs emerged in the 830s, it took many more years before the kings of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden embraced Christianity, and when King Harald Bluetooth declared his adoption of Christianity in 965 AD, it made Denmark the first country in Scandinavia to do so. Missionaries used a standardized language when preaching, which is evident on several runestones. For example, the phrase light in paradise appears on 3 runestones, 2 of which are located in Uppland and a third on the Danish island of Bornholm. The Risbyle runestone U160 says, "May God and God's mother help his spirit and soul, grant him light in paradise." Similarly, Bornholm runestone calls upon Saint Michael and states, May Christ and Saint Michael help the souls of Othbjorn and Glothaler into light in paradise. Separately, the Amnur runestone tells the story of a man who died while wearing his christening robes in Denmark. At least 7 runestones in Uppland describe the stories of converts who passed away while wearing these robes. In areas of weaker royal authority, religious conversion played a vital role in the creation of runestones, particularly in Uppland, Sweden, although the Christianization process was initially slower here. Families in this region utilized runic inscriptions to document their acceptance of Christianity, and although Christianity wasn't widely accepted in Uppland until the early 11th century, a free church system was established, and pagan beliefs were gradually infused with Christian terminology, leading to a replacement of Valhalla, paradise, and Thor's invocations and magic spells giving way to Christian figures such as Saint Michael, Christ, and God. Saint Michael, who commanded the heavenly army, assumed Odin's position as the guide of Christian souls to light in paradise. Many runic inscriptions during this period were created for the pleasure of God, or to ensure safe passage of one's soul. The transition from pagan to Christian burial customs was complex, moving from pagan inhumation and cremation rituals with accompanying grave goods to interment in the church cemetery commonly found in Christianity. While traditional practice was to bury the dead at the clan's ancestral burial site, as Christianization of Viking society progressed, existing runestones were relocated or incorporated into church buildings. Some scholars suggest that these stones fulfilled the emotional needs of the newly converted, yet, despite the new customs of burying loved ones in churchyards, people still desired to honor deceased relatives in their traditional locations closer to family lands through runestones. But since the Christianization process was slower here, resulting in delayed church and cemetery construction, many runestones, especially during the earlier periods, were used as Christian grave markers in pagan grave fields, serving as a substitute for the inclusion of traditional burial artifacts. These ornate stones may have filled the void left by the absence of traditional items buried with their loved ones and became vital in his or her memorialization. So by the 11th century, Norse mythology figures on runestones dwindled, and traditional religious imagery gradually fused with Christian imagery. And by the 12th century, Christianity had replaced the Old Norse religion, even though some elements persisted through Scandinavian folklore. With Christianity's growing prominence, the trend continued, and runestones documented indulgences offered by the Catholic Church in exchange for public works projects like building bridges, roads, loaning to churches, or initiating a pilgrimage. For example, some bridge stones from the 11th century still display runic inscriptions such as the Sur 101, U 489, and U 617. However, the uneven distribution of stones, particularly the fact that only 7% honored women, suggests that religion and burial practices only partially explain their significantly increased appearances during the end of the 10th and 11th centuries. The Ringerike style is named after the Ringerike region north of Oslo, where reddish sandstone was commonly used to carve stones in the style. The Vangstone from Oppland, Norway, is a 7-foot-high stone with intricate carvings and often cited as a definitive example of this style. The tendril ornament on the Vangstone is characterized by its balanced and axial layout, asymmetrical tendrils, and 2 shell spirals at the base. On top, there's a large striding animal with spiral hips and a lip lappa featuring a double contour design. The Ringerike style is compared to the Mammon style, which has wavy scrolls and less disciplined tendrils. However, they're related, as seen in the similarity of animal designs found on the Vangstone and the Jelling stone. A second major style is known as the Urne style, is a Scandinavian animal art that emerged in the 11th and 12th centuries. It's named after the Ørnestad Church's northern gate in Norway, but most objects in this style are actually runestones found in Uppland, Sweden. The style is characterized by intricate animal motifs that are often stylized and abstract. Designs are known for elongated, serpentine bodies, detailed heads, and flowing curves. The early urn style is dated primarily using 3 artifacts: runestones U343 and U344, and a silver bowl found in Lillevalle around 1050. This style is also evident on England runestones that mention Dangold and Canute the Great, as well as pieces created by runemaster Asmund Karlsson. Mid-urn style's age is established with precision based on its appearance on coins issued by Harald Hardrada 1047 to 1066 and Olaf Kjær 1080 to 1090. 2 wood carvings from Oslo in the Ornig plank corroborate this dating, with dendrochronology dating the plank to approximately 1060 to 1070. However, some scholars argue that the mid-Erne style predates 1050, citing examples of works by Runemasters Fulk and Bali. Later on in the mid-Erne style's popularity, the late Erne styles also emerged, credited to the runemaster Opir. This style is defined by slim animals forming circular motifs within open compositions. It can be seen in Sweden on a plank from Bolsted and a chair from Trondheim, Norway. The Jarlabanki runestones exhibit characteristics of both late and mid-Erne styles attributed to Fulk and Bali. The Fulk Bali style emerged from the mid-Erne style and later merged with the Romanesque style in the 12th century. Anne Sophie Grasland's widely accepted runestone categorization, established in the 1990s, covers the period from 980 to 1130 AD, when most runestones were created. Classification includes 7 styles: RAK, FP, PR1, PR2, PR3, PR4, and PR5. The rack style is the oldest style, encompassing the years from 980 to 1015 AD, and is characterized by straight ends and the absence of dragon heads on the runic bands. Examples of the rack style include Rocky U336, Parlevi, and UG 165 runestones. The FP style emerged around 1010 to 1015, and lasted until around 1040 to 1050 when the PR3 style appeared. This style is identified by runic bands that end with animal heads, viewed from above. Notable examples of the FP style include Ripsholm, UFV 1992 157, and So 194 runestones. PR styles have 5 subtypes, PR1 to PR5, with runic bands that end in animal heads viewed in profile. PR1 is part of the Ringerike overall style, covering 1010 to 1040. Notable examples of PR1 include U324, U335, U201, and U161 runestone. PR2 also belongs to the Ringerike style, spanning 1020 to 1050, with examples like SOR 279, U212, U137, and U165. PR3 emerged around 1050 following the Erne style and lasted about a generation until 1080. Examples of PR3 include U194, U240, U256, and U148 runestones. PR4 follows the Erne style and ranges from 1060 to 1100, with examples such as UFV 1976 107, U647, U152, and U871. Finally, PR5 also follows the Erne style, spanning 1100 to 1130, with examples including U104, U1014, U216, and U541. The KB style, identified by bordered crosses, is prevalent in western Sudermanland, but it's not part of the Groslands classification model. The inscriptions on all classifications were usually sponsored or erected in honor of Bender, free property owners responsible for a household and land ownership. In some cases, a widow refers to her deceased husband as her bond, signifying that she was under his authority and was married. When sons pay tribute to their father, they do not refer to him as their bond, unless they wish to specify that he was a good bond, indicating a distinctive status. The runic inscription's use of good, better, and best likely did not imply a lack of moral character, proficiency, or talent in Viking Age Scandinavian. The term good indicates status, supported by the fact that in Sweden and Denmark, one exception, good individuals are usually substantial landowners. Their grandiose monuments and inscriptions revealing their possessions and residence attest to this fact. Only about 10% of the people mentioned in the inscriptions are described as good, and almost all of them are titled males like Thane or Dreng. However, it's also used for particular Bender in some fathers and sons, particularly in eastern Sweden where titles are uncommon. Only 4 good women are identified in the inscriptions. Now, who bestowed the good title on these individuals remains an intriguing question. The way these people are dispersed suggests it may have been the king, as the majority of them are situated in areas where other significant indications of royal power are apparent. One theory suggests that the practice of erecting runestones became popular among specific clans in southern Uppland and spread to neighboring clans, leading to its widespread use in the region. Another explanation points to the prolonged Viking expeditions and the accumulation of wealth in the area, particularly near Stockholm, where chieftains have amassed fortunes through trade and looting in both the east and west. They may have been influenced by other monuments such as the Danish Jelling stones or Irish high crosses, which could have inspired the tradition of erecting runestones. Runic inscriptions found in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway suggest a common origin, likely Denmark's King Harald Bluetooth's monumental stone in Jelling, which marked the transition from paganism to Christianity and a new form of governance. Denmark's shift to a more direct style of royal authority during Harald's and his son Svein's reign likely led to the widespread use of runestones to recognize or resist social and economic changes brought about by these religious and political transformations. In Jodeland, Sweden, runestones may have served a similar political purpose, recognizing land, title, and status. Runic inscriptions serve both religious and political functions, responding to attempts to consolidate royal authority in Sweden's Malar region. Influential individuals in Uppland may have accepted and promoted Christianity as a display of loyalty to royal power or in response to claims that the monarchy was the sole sponsor of the new religion. Nonetheless, historian Anders Winroth argues that Scandinavian kings voluntarily embraced Christianity, recognizing its potential benefits from a political standpoint. However, this transformation of the Scandinavian people demanded the establishment of a church network to propagate the new religion across the region. Hence, the Christianization of Scandinavia isn't just a religious conversion story, but also one of political maneuvering and power. As is typical during any time of political and religious change, the expansion of royal power caused tensions between those who supported and opposed it. This resulted in people needing to assert their loyalties and rights by stating their dissent in connections with runestones becoming a vital tool for this purpose. Runic inscriptions in Abo, Trogd, and Sunda and Uppland differed from those in other parts of the region, but shared similarities with those in Denmark and Jodeland, suggesting concentrated royal power in this specific area. This logic is consistent with the fact that Denmark used the king's power to enforce Christianity, making declarations of paganism a form of defiance. Most runestones in the rest of Uppland are Christian, representing a break from pagan tradition. However, in the region west of Sigtuna, Christian faith was not a concern. This region of Sweden may have played a significant role in establishing a new type of royal authority. The title Drang, referring to a warrior in a royal herd, was more prevalent here than in other parts of Uppland. Runic inscriptions found in Uppland imply that the monarchy's influence took hold in the area west of Sigtuna, posed as a bridgehead roughly a generation after Sigtuna's founding in 1020. The speed and effectiveness with which this new royal power was embraced in other parts of Uppland remain unclear. However, the proliferation of runic monuments may have been a response to the king's establishment in Sigtuna and the dangers they presented. Since runestones were made by individuals within a Viking clan, it was inevitable that grouping of runestones would begin to take shape over time. The Varangian runestones found in Scandinavia describe expeditions to the east, including specific destinations like Gartherik. The Greece and Italy runestones, inscriptions by the Varangian Guard, and other runestones document these eastward voyages. Runestone U922, part of the Greece runestones and in the PR4 style, standing at 9 feet 4 inches in height and almost 5 feet in width, and located in Uppsala Cathedral's floor. Johannes Burrus first documented this stone in 1594, and it was later mentioned by Johannes Schefferus as one of the many runestones used as construction material for the cathedral. The inscription on the stone was last seen by Olaf Celsius in 1729, after which it was covered by a new layer of flooring. A request to remove the runestone along with 3 others for better analysis in 1950 was rejected due to safety concerns. The Hogby runestone is an 11.3 foot tall reddish granite monument that showcases the Ringriken PR1 style. It was initially located on the outer wall of Hogby Church, a cross side facing outward. When the church was destroyed in 1874, the inscription's other side, the B side, was found, leading to the runestone's relocation to the cemetery of the former church. The runestone commemorates Ozur, one of the first Varangians who died in the late 10th or early 11th century while serving the Byzantine Empire, and was commissioned by his niece Thorguther. The inscription on the reverse side, written in a form close to that used in Beowulf, honors Thorguther's other deceased uncles, but the primary purpose of the inscriptions were likely to secure her right of inheritance soon after learning of Ozur's passing. The Kalvestin runestone Fig 8 was crafted in the 9th century, and given that this is the oldest inscription of a Viking chief, it likely played a crucial role in Varangians developing Russia and Ukraine. Ingvar runestones, or Ingvarstenarna in Swedish, are approximately 26 Varangian runestones erected to honor those who died during a Swedish Viking voyage, documented in the Ingvar saga Vithurla to the Caspian Sea, led by Ingvar, far-traveled between 1036 and 1041. The Vikings fought in the Battle of Sassaridi in Georgia and suffered significant losses, including Ingvar himself. Despite this tragedy, the expedition is the third most frequently referenced Swedish event on runestones, after the Greece and England runestones, each with around 30 stones. The Gripsholm runestone, or S179, is a captivating example of the circling runestones, crafted in the FP style. It is situated alongside another 11th century runestone, S178, and their original location remains a mystery. Repurposed as building material for the Gripsholm castle and used as the threshold for the cellar of the eastern tower, it is not entirely recovered until almost a century later. The inscription on the runestone commemorates Haraldr, brother of Ingvar, who is believed to have died in the Caspian Sea region. The England runestones offer valuable insight into Viking Age raiding expeditions, documenting journeys to foreign lands that involve raids, trade, and settlement. The runestones, etched in Old Norse using the younger Futhark alphabet, form one of the most extensive groups of runestones found in Northern Europe. Of the 30 England runestones, 27 were raised in Sweden, mostly in the oldest regions bordering Lake Mälaren. No England runestones have been found in Denmark, even though one mentions London, and 2 have been found outside of Sweden, one in Norway, another in Schleswig, Germany. The U194 runestone in Vasby, Uppland, Sweden, has significant importance beyond being an example of England runestones. Alongside U344, it is among the earliest instances of a rune-style inscription in Uppland. Additionally, the runic text on U194 follows the rule of carving only a single rune for 2 consecutive letters, regardless of whether they appear at the end of one word or the start of another. Ulf Boresta, in addition to being a runemaster, is commemorated in a runestone that records his receipt of 3 Danegelds in England. The U344 runestone, discovered in Jørgard in 1868, is an artifact of the PR3 style and one of the earliest examples of the Urne style in Uppland, dating back to the 11th century. The runes are written from right to left, except for the last words outside the runic band, and it can be dated to the first half of the 11th century based on the use of the Ensunds rune and the absence of dotted runes. The Sigurd stones, located in Sweden, are a collection of 8 or 9 runic inscriptions in a picture stone dating back to the Viking Age. These remarkable stones depict scenes from the heroic Germanic legend of Sigurd, who famously defeated a dragon. The collections include 5 or 6 runestones, 2 natural rocks, and a baptismal font, and represent the earliest known Norse portrayals of the Volsung, which is the foundation of the Sigurd legends found in the poetic Edda, prose Edda, and Volsunga saga, as well as the Middle High German Nibelungenlied. Rusmund carving is a significant piece of Norse art depicting scenes from the legend of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, crafted around 1030 on a flat rock near Ramsund, Södermanland, Sweden. And while not technically a runestone, the carving features Sigurd preparing the heart of the dragon Fulmir for his foster father Regan, among other scenes. The inscription is ambiguous, but seems to have been made for the same aristocratic family as nearby Bro and Koja runestones, mentioning Sigurdur, Holmgir, and Ulrikur. The Jelling stones date back to the 10th century and are a famous set of runestones, which include Gorm the Old and Harald Bluetooth. Gorm the Old was Denmark's first verified king, who reigned from 936 to 958. Gorm the Old stone was initially placed on a stone ship setting, possibly reflecting a pre-Christian pagan tradition that was later moved by Harald due to controversy surrounding their placement at the head of a potentially pagan setting, as he accepted Christianity. Gorm, son of renowned Sigurd the Snake-Eyed and grandson of legendary Ragnar Lothbrok, aimed to unite Denmark after his father's death. He enlisted the help of Thyra, his future queen and partner in power, who designed the Danevirke, a series of walls protecting Denmark's southern border. Recognizing Thyra's contributions, he honored her with a grand burial mound at Jelling. Gorm the Old stone was placed between the north and south mounds, creating a ritual structure comparable to the Danish Lavendrop stone in its ship setting. The inscription reads, King Gorm made these runes in honor of his wife Thyra, pride of Denmark, testing the Gorm's love for Thyra and his role in establishing the Danish state. Harald Bluetooth was a powerful and ambitious king, ruling Denmark from 958 to 986 and subjugating Norway after Harald Greycloak's assassination in 970 AD. In the timeless tradition of a son having to outdo his father, Harald Bluetooth's oversized runestone at the Jelling complex served 2 purposes: to demonstrate a spiritual and genealogical influence and to unite his subjects under a shared faith with his Christian allies. This stone symbolizes his transition from a pagan chieftain to a divinely appointed Christian monarch, elevating the traditional political and spiritual influence of a Scandinavian leader. As Denmark's earliest historical documents, the Jelling stones provide evidence of Harald's control over southern Norway and conversion to Christianity, showcasing Denmark's status as an early major Viking Age kingdom. Harald's stone, featuring images of Jesus Christ and a great beast in the Scandinavian mammon style, is a unique blend of Norse paganism and Christianity and the oldest depiction of Christ in Scandinavia. The rock runestone, known as Rokstenen, or Ygg 136, stands next to a church in Rock Odeshut municipality, Östergötland, Sweden. It holds immense significance as the longest runic inscription on stone and the first Swedish literary work. Weighing 5.1 tons and measuring 8 feet tall, it was discovered in the 19th century as a church wall component and removed later, and remains one of the few valuable historical artifacts that have not been lost due to runestone's common use as church building materials. The rock runestone dates back to the early 9th century with runes on 5 sides and features approximately 760 characters of pre-Christian runic inscription, making it a historical and artistic treasure. Its cryptic kennings, displacement, and use of cipher runes adds to its mystique and suggests that it may have been used in magic rituals. Sparlosa runestone, Sweden's second most famous after the rock runestone, dates back to 800 AD and stands 5 feet 10 inches tall. Found in 1669, it was used as construction material and later rebuilt into Sparlusa church wall after a fire in 1684. But in 1937, it was removed and reunited. The runestone has a unique blend of elder and younger folkloric rune forms, with a ship depiction that suggests a date in the 8th century, but with the sail that indicates a later date. It features a younger line that says, "Easily made this memorial after Gunnar, brother." The stone mentions a significant battle and depicts individuals named Eric and Ulrich, both royal names connected to the Swedish Yngling dynasty in Uppsala. It also notes the father's residence in Uppsala, providing an early example of place name usage and suggests the Swedish Geatish wars described in Beowulf. And with that, the runic inscribed stones of the Viking Age offer valuable insights into Viking society and culture, serving multiple functions as memorials, religious artifacts, political propaganda tools, and documentation of significant events and beliefs. With over 3,000 stones spread across Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, they are a unique and invaluable source of knowledge that help us piece together the history of this fascinating period. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to find out more about some of the weapons the Viking used or other information about the Vikings, click on one of the videos